During his hour-plus-long press conference yesterday in Mar-a-Lago, President-elect Trump talked about annexing Greenland, renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, taking back the Panama Canal, and making Canada the, quote, 51st state. So God only knows what he has in mind for day two.
Yeah, God only knows what the late-night comedy people have in mind for day two, because that's a two-day-old joke. Press conference was the day before yesterday, not yesterday. They're already recycling their Trump stuff. What a bunch of losers. Honestly. But they're very happy Trump is back because they've been very unfunny for the last 4 years. They're hopeful that going after Trump will be good with their Circle Fest in a hot tub crowd. Well, happy Thursday and welcome. We remain at 888-630-9625, an absolutely toll-free telephone number. We have Apocalypse Now going on in the Los Angeles Metroplex. Got James Woods, the actor and activist on Twitter, which some people like to call X, and his neighborhood burned out. The Los Angeles, an absolute apocalypse. It's Armageddon. It's all the Democrats' fault. Let's not kid ourselves here. It's all the Democrats' fault. They refuse to groom the forests, because they limit their grooming, and we know what they limit their grooming to. But they refuse to groom the forest. They refuse to clear cut. Trees are a recyclable resource, renewable resource. Because they grow in the dirt, and it'd be good if you put some water in there. Maybe California should start desalinating water, since they reside next to the largest body of water on the planet Earth. It's called the Pacific Ocean, and in Israel they desalinate water all day, every day out of the Mediterranean Sea, and they give a lot of it to Hamas, the terrorists, the genocidal, blood-drenched ghouls, the troglodytes from hell. The Palestinians. Are they Palestinians, Michael? They're really just Hamas. And up the coast a little, you got Hezbollah. And down the coast, you got the Houthis. And it's a crazy world, isn't it? But let's go back to California for a minute, because they've got these fires burning all over the place. And most of them, I think, are still 0% contained. They haven't contained them. To the extent they have it, 0%. So they're not doing a very good job. In Pacific Palisades, where everybody's house starts at $3.2 million or something like that. I think that the average price of a home in Pacific Palisades is $3.2 million. It's a nice neighborhood. It's a good neighborhood. Houses are nice. I always like Pacific Palisades very much. Beverly Hills is real nice, and Bel Air, sure, that's great. Pacific Palisades, wonderful. I think Steven Spielberg lives there. He's kind of wealthy. He's well-to-do, been very successful in life. And people are fleeing like it's World War II and the Soviet invasion is just around the corner. They're fleeing like the place is on fire, because it is. And this is a catastrophe that ought to change the complexion, not just of California physically, which it's already done, but politically. It really should. And I've got a lot to say about this, because they love the smelt fish, so you can't have dams, because the dams might hurt the smelt fish. And the Democrats, they love smelt fish, but they'll burn everybody in the state to death in order to protect a dozen smelt fish. So they're not on the side of civilization or humanity. They're the left. They're not liberals. Nobody kills like the left, even the fires. But the fires, honestly, the Democrats, they're responsible for their reservoirs being low, for the dams being gone. They removed them so that Native Americans could get salmon. They really like salmon. I get salmon all the time. I've never gone to a river in California to get them, but that's me. And so they love Native Americans. They love smelt fish. They hate the human beings, the other people in California. Amazing, amazing stuff. And, the reservoirs are empty. Why? They had the biggest rain year in the history of the world last year. That's only somewhat hyperbolic. But I got a brother lives in San Diego, California. He's been thrilled with the snowfall and the rainfall because he likes to go from San Diego up into the mountains every weekend and go snowboarding, right? A lot of snowboarding and stuff because they had the deepest snow, giant snowpack and all that stuff. Remarkable things. But it's all the Democrats' fault. These fires are all and that's not just political hyperbole. It is political hyperbole, but it's not just political hyperbole. It has the benefit of being true. And now let's go to the Panama Canal, because the Panama Canal, which the Chinese communists control, it was handed over to the Panamanians by Jimmy Carter, right? And then I believe it was during H.W. Bush when we went in to get Manuel Noriega, the pineapple, pineapple face. He was not a good guy, bad guy. And we went in to get him with the U.S. military, and we took back the Panama Canal like that, right? Like that. I just snapped my fingers because we did it lickety-split. Sent the United States Army in there. Was that the 82nd Airborne? I think that was the 82nd Airborne. Went in and took Panama, played some loud music, took the Panama Canal back in no time at all. But the Chinese communists, you see, they're making their moves around the world because they want the 21st century to be the Chinese communist century, which is bad for humanity, since nobody has murdered more people in the history of the world than the Chinese communist regime since 1949 and the revolution of the chairman Mao Zedong, the big revolution. And they had the Cultural Revolution. They had this. They murdered tens of millions of their own people. They got a lot of raw material to work with. Ask any liberal, they'll tell you they got a lot of raw material to work with. But President Trump making them go crazy with the Don Roe doctrine, talking about buying Greenland. And Donald Trump Jr. went up there the other day to Greenland. Greenland is very large, and there are very few people there. I've got some fun stats on that because it's kind of amusing. Every person in Greenland, it's a very large place. It's even larger than Alaska, substantially larger than Alaska. And Alaska is rather large, I've got to say. But in Greenland, they've got a population of 56,225 people or something at last count. And there might be more today because a plane might have left or arrived or something. And here's the thing. It's so big. How big is it? More than 836,000 square miles with 56,000 people. That means every person has almost 15 square miles to themselves. They got 14.95 square miles per person in Greenland. It's not a very busy place, not bustling. Manhattan, it's not. And nobody's being set on fire on their subway trains either, which is kind of nice. But we've got updates for you on that because President Trump talking about buying Greenland from Denmark, and Denmark says, oh, no, They don't speak French, but that's okay. And it's more fun to do Pepe Le Pew, isn't it? And then Canada, we're going to give Canada statehood, whether they want it or not. But we're not really, of course. He's just messing with them, just having fun, and we'll get something. He's negotiating. This is Trump. It's the art of the deal. And he's making fun of them and everybody else, and he's having a good time. And he will strike a deal down the line that will benefit the United States of America and Western civilization. Most people that call themselves liberals are not pro-Western civilization, and whether they know it or not, and a lot of them, I'm convinced, don't even know it, but they've been brainwashed by the left, and now they're really not on our side or on the side of the Enlightenment or the Magna Carta. Set aside the American Constitution, the Bill of Rights. They have nothing but contempt for the Bill of Rights and the American Constitution. But a lot to get to today because, and I got to tell you, the fires in greater Los Angeles metropolitan area, completely nuts. James Woods, the fun actor and Twitter troll, James Woods' house burning sparks online celebrations because Democrats love death and destruction because they're not Democrats at all. They're leftists and maybe too dumb to realize that, but they've been brainwashed, indoctrinated, and now they love it when houses burn down as long as it's not their house. And who started these fires, by the way? We have multiple fires. What is the point of origin of these various fires? Are we talking about Democrats with Molotov cocktails, which they bring to their riots and their attacks on police stations and courthouses, which are all insurrections, by the way? But never mind that. But online, the Democrats are celebrating James Woods' house burning because they're a hate cult and a death cult. Filthy, rotten. They love abortion, and they love the prisoners at Gitmo that they want to reward, and prisoners on federal death row who Joe Biden commuted all their sentences except for 3 terrorist murderers, but never mind that. Firefighters make big gains battling Sunset Fire, which forced evacuations in Hollywood. See, if it's in Hollywood, then it matters. And if Steven Spielberg's house is in danger, then it matters to the people at ABC News headquarters in New York and to George Snuffleupagus in Washington. So they make big gains, the Los Angeles Times on it. The Palisades, Pacific Palisades, wonderful, beautiful area of the world. At least it was until the last couple of days. Sarah Michelle Gellar, very wealthy because of her dad's money, leads stars blasting L.A. mayor as gridlock cripples evacuations. They're complaining about the traffic now. After Palisades fire hydrants lacked water, fire hydrants are not supposed to lack water. That's a problem. City officials blame demand. There's just too much demand. What with the fires and everything, too much demand for water, and they're not happy about that. That's also the Los Angeles Times. City officials, they blame demand. It's a supply and demand thing. You guys are in charge of supply, all right? And when the fires come, because you guys don't groom the forests, then and the reservoirs have been allowed to run dry, and you're running the water off into the Pacific Ocean, which doesn't help anybody. You guys ought to be brought up on charges. You should be in handcuffs. You should be in orange jumpsuits. There should be, and then you could make a cable reality show about your time in prison and make money off of it. Isn't that amazing? And astounding what has happened is the quote in the headline from Mediaite. Biden says Hunter and his wife may have lost their home in L.A. fire. May have. And he said the good news is, and it was really, the guy can't speak. He should still step down, I think. If it's January 19th and he's still president, he should step down because he shouldn't serve out his full term as president of the United States. Amazing stuff. And also, one of the big problems, not only do they make sure that the reservoirs run dry, that the hydrants don't have water to spray on fires, so they spread and spread. Also, have you noticed, you watched a lot of this video, you don't see firefighters anywhere fighting fires. You don't see fire trucks anywhere. I've seen bulldozers pushing people's Teslas into ditches off the road because they were told to get out of their cars and run for their lives because it's Los Angeles. And, the old hero of all the disaster movies, George Kennedy, nowhere to be found because he's long gone. Amazing stuff. But listen to this. There is no water coming out of the hydrants. Do you know that Los Angeles sent a whole bunch of they cut the budget by millions and millions of dollars for the fire department, more than $17 million. The mayor did, right? Then she went to Ghana for an inauguration. But they cut the budget of the fire department. They have a DEI program where they want to have like an all-lesbian fire department in Los Angeles. The fire chief is a lesbian woman who created a 3-year program to create more diversity, equity, and inclusion in the fire department. How's that going? That's going pretty well. 5 dead so far that we've confirmed. Whole lot more dead in the burned-out houses that we'll find out about much later, maybe, and then again, maybe not. But here's the headline from NPR in 2023. Firefighting is mostly white and male. That could be a problem. A California program aims to change that. All right, okay. All right, damn the patriarchy and toxic masculinity. Go around putting out fires and stuff like that. But now they've got a politically correct fire department while the city burns to the ground. And it's the largest metroplex geographically in the United States of America. Isn't that amazing? And do you remember in 2021, they fired 113 firefighters in the Los Angeles Fire Department. And they suspended them without pay because they refused to get the COVID vaccine mandate. Isn't that amazing? Also, I've got, today is the Jimmy Carter funeral in Washington, D.C. I drove by some of the blocked off roads on the way to work this morning. And I've got a Jimmy Carter story for you that involves Mar-a-Lago and the presidential yacht, the Sequoia, and the Panama Canal. What do they have in common? We are at 888-630-9625. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. All right, we've got a lot of Democrat craziness to cover today because they're so crazy and there's so many of them, and they make so many incredibly bad decisions. They're just extraordinarily horrible people, and they're destroying the world. Other than that, I'm sure they make good neighbors and sons-in-law, things like that. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. We are at 888-630-9625. Claudia Tenney sounds like Congresswoman New York, sounds like she's been listening to my radio show, doesn't she? A little bit. We'll get Claudia. She's wonderful. We'll get Claudia Tenney shortly. Let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Ken, calling from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Oh, Ken, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. Thanks for putting me on. This looks like a time where, the iron is hot. It's time to strike. We need to get people like Scott Pressler, who did a great job turning things around in Pennsylvania for Trump. I mean, he was going into places like gun shops and getting people to register to vote and spreading the good word, spreading the gospel of conservatism and being a good Republican and whatnot. People are really suffering out there, and I feel so sorry for them, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But you know what? This is a great opportunity for conservatives to get out there into California and, be very tactful about it, but say, hey, you might want to start thinking about the way you do things and think about how you run your government, and maybe you ought to come on our side. Again, being very tactful and being subtle about it, but when people are down and out, this is when you're best able to get through to them. It's like, when an alcoholic hits rock bottom. Just thinking out loud here, Chris.
No, you're 100% right. I've got to say that at Newsmax yesterday when I did my show, and a number of us went out for a cool beverage last night after the show, and we were talking about California. And I got to say, I was saying that I think there is a sea change in the offing here in California, culturally and politically, that this, I hope, and look, if they fail this test, then California's lost, and we should just give it to Mexico. Mexico probably wouldn't want it, though. It'd lead to more gang violence in Mexico if we gave California to Mexico. But honestly, this is a test for California, for the people of California, for the educational system, for the media of California. The culture in California is being tested right now, and it is time to wake up. And a great idea about Scott Pressler and getting intelligent conservative voices out there to point out. And listen, I'm gonna point out a few things myself, and Congresswoman Claudia Tenney coming up as well. But Ken, I think you're 100% right. And I love the language you use, to be tasteful, be subtle, don't be ham-handed, don't yell, don't be a difficult person. Just tell the truth about what the Democrat Party has done to California. All right, now I mentioned Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, who this morning was on the Fox News channel and talking about now our great listener, our great first caller, Ken, calling in from Virginia with some great thinking that articulate Republican conservative voices should be in California soon. Right now might be too soon, but very soon, to lay out what the Democrats have done to the state of California by starving the state of California of water in reservoirs. The Democrats they're guilty as hell when it comes to their mismanagement of the forests and forestry. I played audio yesterday of Donald Trump talking about this, and it was several years ago when President Trump was with Governor Gavin Newsome, and he's talking about cleaning the forests as they do in Finland, maintaining the forests, maintaining roads into the forest so firefighters can get to remote locations. When there are fires, you can contain the fires and put them out more quickly. But the left, the radical left-wing environmental extremists, they have demanded no forestry because trees never grow back, but trees grow back very quickly all over the place. It's a renewable resource, trees. But the left, and that's the Democrat Party, and environmental radicals, environmental eco-terrorists, like the Unabomber. The Unabomber was an environmental radical, and they are everywhere. They're everywhere. We had the guy that set himself on fire in front of the Supreme Court about 2 years ago on Earth Day, who came in from Colorado to self-immolate in front of the Supreme Court, and he killed himself. And he did it on Earth Day because he was angry that we were polluting the air. No sense of irony, these people. He then set himself on fire, and he went up in smoke, quite literally. But these environmental extremists in California and elsewhere, they have restricted access to the forests by, forestry companies who actually maintain and clean and maintain roads, the forests. They maintain roads in the forest. And then, there's access to the forest for firefighters. Also, you clean up the floors of the forest so they're not tinder boxes everywhere you turn. Also, you fill your reservoirs when you have 40 million people living in a state, as California does. You more than they have in Canada, and Canada's the second largest country on the planet Earth. California is just a third world country or a third world state, as the case may be. But as I've been saying for years, because it's true, wherever the left goes, they bring the third world with them. Again, they're not liberals, they're the left. And the left the left is the third world. And the third world is the left. And when the left takes over California, it becomes a third world state. And it becomes a third world state, meaning that when you have Steven Spielberg's neighborhood up in flames and the lesbian firefighters show up and they attach a hose to the fire hydrant, no water comes out. No water comes out because there is no water in the pipes because the reservoirs are at such low levels that they can't get the water from the reservoir, if there is any water left in the reservoir, to the fire hydrants to put out the fires, Steven Spielberg's house and everybody else's multi-million-dollar homes. That is the third world. We used to laugh at this kind of stuff in third world beep hole countries around the world. And we say, well, good thing we live in the United States of America where the patriarchy has already taken care of all this stuff. Toxic masculinity cuts down on forest fires and certainly urban fires like the ones we're watching now. But let me go to Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, who is a Republican from the state of New York, believe it or not. But she's great. I met her at least once and liked her. And she's a normal person, a thinking person, an intelligent person. And she was on the Fox News channel talking about the situation in California and pointed out a couple of things that I was talking about yesterday that certainly others have been talking about as well. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney.
This is a tragedy. It's just horrific to watch this unfold, but it's the result of bad politics and bad policy on the part of the Democrats. They haven't properly maintained their forests. They haven't properly maintained their energy or their water supply. They had the Pacific Ocean right there. They haven't taken advantage of the fact that they could be doing more, and they should have prevented this.
Yeah, I've been telling you about this for years. When I moved to California in 1979, and at that time, from Chicago, and I moved there. I arrived January 1st after being snowed in at Chicago's O'Hare Airport for 3 days because of a giant blizzard. And then we got on a great DC-10 airplane. I think it was United Airlines. And in the front of the airplane, they had a bar. And it was so big, people would go in and stand around and stuff. And they had two bartenders, and one was in uniform, Chicago Bears cheerleader, and the other was in uniform, Los Angeles Rams cheerleader. And that was a good flight. That was a lot of fun after 3 days snowed in at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, where we met members of the Vanilla Fudge Band. We didn't really. It's just an obscure song lyric, but amazing stuff. And I said, well, why aren't you desalinating water? You've got the Pacific Ocean right there. Let's suck in water from the Pacific Ocean, desalinate, take the salt out of it, because the patriarchy makes things like that possible. You're welcome. And Israel does it all day, every day, even gives water to the terrorists, in the Gaza. Hey, we'll desalinate the water from the Mediterranean Sea for you. We know you're incapable of doing that and have been for thousands of years, but we'll try to help you out. And if you like, maybe we'll give you electricity too. But that's another thing. Now let's go to back to Claudia Tenney, who's making intelligent points. Hey, the Pacific Ocean's right there. You got water issues. You've got forestry issues. You've got reservoir issues. They've got rolling blackouts in California, too. More than 50% of sub-Saharan Africa has no electricity today because they have no electricity every day. That's because the patriarchy was kicked out. You're welcome. And here's Claudia Tenney talking about the Democrats screwing everything up in California.
I think with new policies in place with the Republicans and maybe some change, maybe the people in California will finally wake up and elect people that are going to make them safe, which is the obligation of government. So it's really hard to watch this. I mean, it's just terrible. But this could happen in any one of these really blue, far-left progressive states where they refuse to use common sense and science to actually protect the people that they're supposed to protect.
Common sense isn't, as I'm fond of saying, because it's true. Isn't that amazing? So she's great, Claudia Tenney. And I've got to say, what Claudia Tenney is saying is exactly what Ken was talking about, our first brilliant caller this morning, about getting intelligent conservative voices out there to just lay out for the voters of California what the Democrat Party has done to their third world hellhole of a burned-out shell of a former state. And I think Claudia Tenney is exactly on the mark, on the money there. And a round of applause for Claudia Tenney, and we're going to need a lot more of that. President Trump, let's go to soundbite number 2. The President Trump, and I played this one for you yesterday with Gavin Newsome in 2018 after a giant fire there. And President Trump was giving good, sound advice that was not followed by the left-wing extremists like Gavin Newsome.
Got to take care of the floors, the floors of the forests, very important. You look at other countries where they do it differently, and it's a whole different story. I was with the president of Finland, and he said, we have a much different, we're a forest nation. He called it a forest nation. And they spend a lot of time on raking and cleaning and doing things, and they don't have any problem. And when it is, it's a very small problem.
Right, it's a very small country, so it couldn't really be that big a problem. But Finland, beautiful Finland. Been to Finland myself. Didn't spend a lot of time in the forests, but if I did, I'd rake. I'd bring a rake. I want a metal rake. I don't want those bamboo rakes. I want a good metal rake. But they should get all the teenagers out there. And then maybe the California Conservation Corps should be created again. And they could get out there with rakes and clean up the forest. So, at least around the $10 million house neighborhoods and the Steven Spielberg neighborhoods and stuff. But President Trump proven right once again. Gavin Newsome, total hack once again, because he's a Democrat. And what more do you need to know, honestly? President Trump, in September of last year, also talking about the crazy stuff going on in California, because these fires, they're an ongoing thing. I moved to Santa Barbara, California, from Chicago after being snowed in at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, and then taking a DC-10 airplane, big wide-body airplane built by the patriarchy. You're welcome. And the bar in front with cheerleaders. It was good. And my brother Patrick, it was great stuff. And I got there when I arrived in Santa Barbara. The Riviera. There's a hill, a small mountain. It's really a big hill surrounding downtown Santa Barbara. And the year before, they had a massive fire sweep through that hill with a bunch of 1920s Spanish-style mansions, and they were all burned to the ground. And when I got there, I went up to the fire zone, and I was agog. I was amazed. I couldn't believe that this had happened in this beautiful place, Santa Barbara, and a very wealthy place, too, generally speaking, back then. Now there are as many homeless people as there are people that live in houses, but because the Democrats are making things better. They're very open-minded. Oh, so open-minded their brains have fallen out. Amazing stuff, but I couldn't believe they had this fire right there on the Riviera surrounding Santa Barbara, mountains, small mountains, surrounding big hills, surrounding downtown Santa Barbara. and the fire was unbelievable. It looked like, post-World War II stuff. And Southern California looks like post-World War World War II stuff today, too. It looks like Dresden with these buildings just burned out shells, the steel-reinforced concrete remains, patriarchy again, and nothing else is left. These things hollowed out shells of former buildings, and they're going to have to be bulldozed. They're going to have to be torn down and start over again. They're saying this is going to cost at least $50 billion. And so, maybe Joe Biden should go write a check. Maybe send FEMA out there. Have they made it to North Carolina yet, FEMA? I'm not sure they've made it to North Carolina yet because they think there might be Trump voters there. Remember that? But speaking of Trump, here's Trump in September of last year.
You have so much water, and all those fields that are right now barren, the farmers would have all the water they needed, and you could revert water up into the hills where you have all the dead forests, where the forests are so brittle, because no place is like California. I go to Austria. The head of Austria tells me, we have trees that are much more flammable than what you have in California. We never have forest fires because they maintain their forests. And you have all that water that could be used as water, what they call water flow, where where the land would be damp. And you'd stop many of these horrible fires.
So I was 19 years old when I moved to Santa Barbara, and I saw the burned out Riviera, and I say, hey, I got an idea. Hey, look to the right. There's the Pacific stinking ocean. It is the largest body of water on the planet Earth. Maybe you put a pipe in there and suck a bunch of water out, desalinate, have reservoirs at the ready so that when you need lots of water, you have it right there. Huh? How about that kind of, the Romans would have done that a couple thousand years ago. Maybe you idiots in California should be doing that. And honestly, they've gotten dumber and dumber since 1979. They haven't gotten smarter. They've gotten worse. And one of the reasons they've gotten worse is because of Gavin Newsome and people like Gavin Newsome. Here is Gavin Newsome in December of 2022 as governor, bragging about removing dams. Now, they tore down, I believe they removed 4 dams. And they were very proud that never in American history have we blown up and destroyed so many dams where you might store water and make reservoirs. That's why we have dams. And then the water flows through, and you could put turbines in there, create electricity. So it's beneficial all the way around the block. But the Democrats are anti-hydroelectric electricity. That is like the Hoover Dam. They'd blow that up, too, because the fish, like the old existential question, because the fish. But here's Gavin Newsome, December of 2022, bragging about destroying 4 dams, so reducing the amount of water they have on hand, and no electricity because they don't want nuclear energy. They don't want hydroelectric energy. They don't want coal-powered plants. They want windmills, which were created by Persia in, the 9th century or the 8th century. Windmills created in Persia. So they want to, travel back in time more than 1,000 years, more than a millennium, and say, hey, maybe windmills are the answer. Maybe getting you out of the conversation is the answer. Gavin Newsome.
The largest dam removal project in U.S. history and one of the most significant, if not the most significant, water restoration projects, bringing back salmon and steelhead into this basin. And I couldn't be more proud as a father because my kids and their great-great-grandkids will have the opportunity to see something that, has been here since time immemorial. And it's about damn time.
Yeah, they'll see it like the ancients saw it, too, in the dark. They'll see it, and they can jump in and try to catch a salmon with their hands like cavemen because the Democrats, in the name of progress, are bringing us back more than 1,000 years, and in the name of environmentalism, are creating the circumstances for these giant wildfires. Gavin Newsome.
Words mean nothing unless you can manifest them. You got to make something real. You got to make the words visible. We mean business. We're going to be turning this over in a very short period of time.
The biggest dam removal project in the history of the country. So that's the biggest reservoir removal project in the history of the country and probably of Western civilization because no other country is that stupid. No other state is that stupid. No other governor. I'd like to think there might be a couple of Democrats out there. is that stupid. Amazing. I've got more on California, the idiocy there. And again, what do Mar-a-Lago, the Panama Canal, and the presidential yacht Sequoia have in common? That is coming up. All right, there's a lot to say about Jimmy Carter's funeral at the Washington National Cathedral as well. And I will get to that. A lot of interesting activity there. Handshakes, seating arrangements, who's there and who's not. Interesting stuff. But right now, let's go back to the telephones, Michael. Let us go to Ivan, calling from Miramar Beach, Florida. Ivan, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, good morning, Chris. How you doing, man?
Very well, buddy. What do you know?
Yeah, Chris, it's just, your heart goes out for those who have lost, first thing, your heart goes out for those who have lost homes, businesses, and property in California. Mm-hmm. It's usually the time where Americans usually come together when there's, travesty like that.
That's right.
But it's a stark reminder, Chris, of elections have consequences. You see on the one hand, you see Trump's healing the country and the world before he even takes office. The world is starting to come together and healing. And then on the opposite spectrum of that is the lack of leadership that you see in California with the wildfires. And, Chris, you never know how these things will play out. But I would think that Newsome just got eliminated for president, running for president in 2028 with the wildfires. I don't see how anybody could be, support, what's happening in California and their response to it. But on the other hand, Chris, to tweak the left, which is always fun to do, Chris, I think you should start Trump 48 T-shirts and mugs.
Trump 48.
48.
Oh, I thought to make him go crazy again for his third term.
That would send them bananas, Chris. you should be the first to start it. All right, my friend.
That's a really fun idea. Listen, I got to tell you, Ivan, last night I said I went out with friends from Newsmax last night. We went out and a couple of us had burgers. My best girl came down and we had smash burgers and stuff and some beers. And we were talking about California. And I said that I think, I think there's going to be a major political change in California as a result of this. I think this one is different. And this catastrophe, California is used to catastrophes. And many of them are created by the Democrats. Some of them are just earthquakes and nature and so on. But the Democrats create these catastrophes. And I think I hope you're entirely right that Gavin Newsome is now out for 2028, out of the presidential race because of these events in California, multiple events, the mismanagement by the Democrats, by the Gavin Newsomes of the world that led to fire hydrants with no water and fire trucks that don't show up. And, when they do it, you got an LGBTQ brigade. And I don't see any fire trucks spraying water on anything. I haven't seen any of that.